This is an audio recording of Bob the Photographer by Arthur M. Winfield, narrated by Right Here Audio. Chapter 7, Bob and the Elephant. For the moment, it looked as if Bob and Frank would be crushed under the ponderous feet of the elephant. The beast was thoroughly enraged over the way in which the smashed camera had been pointed at him. Possibly he had never had his picture taken, and he did not understand it. Perhaps he took the instrument for some new machine of destruction. He trumpeted loudly as he came near to the two, and this noise attracted the attention of the keepers who had gone ahead to see what had caused the delay on the road. "Ho, ho!" shouted one of the men. "Ho, there, Jonko!" But Jonko would not listen. He had now reached the spot where Bob and Frank had stood, and was continuing after the two, who were scurrying across the open field, which was close at hand. The keepers at once started after the elephant, only one remaining behind to keep the remainder of the herd in check. "By Jove, I believe he means business," gasped Frank. "The best thing we can do is to get out of the way," returned Bob. They soon reached the end of the open field. Beyond were a mass of brush and a number of small trees. Frank dived into the brush and disappeared from sight. Bob was not so fortunate, and the elephant continued after the youth, as if bent upon venting his rage before giving up the chase. At length, Bob came to a clump of small trees and darted among them. They were so close together that he knew the beast could not get between them, and for the moment he thought himself safe, although the position was far from a pleasant one. But when the elephant reached the trees, he at once threw his weight against the foremost, and they went down with a crash as if they had been so many pipe stems. One of the falling trees struck Bob, and he was knocked flat on his back. Before he could rise, the elephant was upon him. Bob did his best to scramble out of the way, but before he could do so, the beast caught him by the coat and hoisted the youth in the air. By this time, the keepers were close at hand. Each was armed with a sharp steel, and they began to prod the elephant whenever they got the chance. He trumpeted at a great rate, but did not let go his hold upon Bob until the youth, under a sudden inspiration, hit him in the eye with his fist. This blow surprised the elephant more than it hurt him, but his surprise made him uncurl his trunk and loosen his grip, and Bob lost no time in leaping to a safe distance. Then the keepers surrounded the beast, and swiftly and skillfully chained his two right feet together, and otherwise bound him, and the danger was over. Frank rushed from the brush to where Bob stood, pale as a sheet. "Are you hurt?" he demanded anxiously. "No, but I don't want to go through any such experience again," returned Bob. "That's the first and last time I shall try to photograph an elephant." "The camera is totally smashed," went on Frank. "Serves you right," growled the head keeper. "If you hadn't pointed that thing at Jonko, he would have been as quiet as a kitten. He don't take to strange things." Frank was about to say something concerning the damages and who was to stand them, but he changed his mind, for he knew the keeper was more than half right. It was not long before the circus moved on again. Jonko still acted somewhat wildly, but the keepers kept him well in hand. "This ends the camera trip," said Frank, as the last of the equipage passed out of sight around a bend in the road. "The camera is good for kindling wood and nothing else." "It is partly my fault," said Bob. "What was the machine worth?" "It cost me $70, but it was not your fault, Bob, so don't worry. I have another at home, even better than this. Perhaps the lens isn't injured." They made a hunt and found the lens crushed in the soft dirt. There was a tiny scratch upon it, but this Frank thought could be remedied. Without further delay, they struck out for Stampton, which they expected to reach by the middle of the afternoon. At 12 o'clock, they found themselves near a moss-covered cottage, in the doorway of which an old man sat smoking. Frank hailed him. "What are the chances of our getting dinner here, friend, if we pay for it?" "The chances is mighty good," returned the old man. "Mary!" A middle-aged woman came to the door. "What is it, Pop?" "These yer young men want dinner." "Oh!" "Cost both of ye 20 cents apiece," went on the old man. "That's fair enough," said Frank. "Can we have it soon?" "I will have it ready in 1/4 of an hour," said the woman. "That is time enough." The woman disappeared, and Frank and Bob sat down on a bench to rest. They entered into conversation with the old man, and it was not long before the talk drifted around to the Wright robbery, of which the old man had just heard. "They ain't cotched them fellers yet, I hear," he said. "It's a great pity." "That's true, but perhaps they'll be caught soon," said Frank. "Do you know, I have an idea I saw them chaps." "Tell us of it," put in Bob eagerly. "It was last night. I have rheumatics, and can't sleep very well. I got up about 11 o'clock to rub some liniments on my leg, when I heard talking going on back by the barn. I listened for a minute, and then hollered out to find out who was there. Well, did you see them? Yes. They didn't answer nothing but made tracks for the road and got out of sight just as quick as they could. Did you look at the place where they had been? Yes, but I couldn't see nothing. Have you any objections to our looking? Of course not. Go ahead. Or hold up, I'll show you where I see them. The old man led the way to the spot. A carriage shed hid it from the house. Both of the boys looked around carefully, striving to find some clue which might prove that the men had been the robbers. While they were looking, the old man plied them with questions. He was surprised to learn of the part Bob had played in the first chase. I shouldn't think you would want to meet him again, he laughed. That's just where you're mistaken. I shall not be satisfied until those rascals are run down. I have an idea they went to Stampton, said the old man. Bob shook his head. No, the police are watching out for them there. They have passed around Stampton and gone to some other place. What place? There is no telling. They might go to Dartonville, or Burnham's Ridge, or else strike out directly for the river. Most likely they struck out for the river, said Frank. That is, if the men were really the robbers. They might have been tramps. I don't think so, said the old man. Tramps don't move away so lively like these fellers did. All laughed at this point, the old man loudest of all. Presently, before Bob had completed his search, the woman came out to announce dinner. She looked at Bob sharply a number of times, and seemed on the point of asking some question, but changed her mind and remained silent. Well, there doesn't seem to be any use in searching farther, said Frank. Perhaps they only stopped here to talk over their plans. But what did they do with their booty? Questioned Bob. They either have it with them, or else they hid it somewhere. It isn't likely they would hide it around here. That's so, said the old man. Did you see if any of them carried a bundle? Asked Bob. I don't know but what one of them did, but it was too dark to be certain on it. There was a second of silence, broken by the woman. I'm afraid dinner will be spoiled if you wait any longer, she said. Well, we'll give it up, said Frank, as he turned towards the house. No, we won't, shouted Bob. Look here. He had picked up something from among the straw and dirt. What's that? Cried Frank. A spoon, and it's one of Mrs. Wright's. How do you know? Because it's just like the one she showed me. It has the same letter D on it. Yes, she was a Dahmer afore she got married, put in the old man. Perhaps there are more of them, put in the woman. All began a stricter search than ever, but although they went over every inch of the ground, nothing more was found. I have an idea they merely looked over their booty, said Bob. They were anxious to find out what they had got and couldn't wait any longer, or else they had a row among themselves and started to divide up, suggested Frank. Well, one thing is certain, concluded Bob. The men were Casco, Barker, and Grogan. They were soon inside the house and making away with a well-cooked food the woman had prepared for them. The meal over, they were on the point of leaving when the woman touched Bob on the arm. Haven't I seen you before? She said. Perhaps. I used to work for Joel Caro. I didn't know the man. I must be mistaken, but I fancied I had met you some years ago, when you were a small boy. I used to live with old Peter Thompson, before I went to work for Caro. Then that is where we met. I used to work for Thompson. You did? How long? From the time his wife died until you were about 7 or 8 years old. Bob was immediately interested. Here was somebody who might know something concerning the past. He motioned to the woman, and the two walked to one side, Frank refraining from following, knowing Bob would rather be alone. May I ask your name? Went on Bob. Mary Ridley. Were you related to Thompson? Very distantly, yes. Do you remember when he brought me to the place? He did not bring you. No. No, a man in a carriage brought you. Who was the man? Mary Ridley shook her head. You did not know? No. I asked Peter, but he would not say and evaded the question. Did you ever hear where I came from? And Bob's heart beat quickly at this direct question. I can't answer that truthfully. Once Peter said you had come from a Brooklyn orphan asylum. Then he said you were the son of an old friend who had lived in Batavia. And another time he got angry and said he had a good mind to send you back to Buffalo where you belonged. Bob mused for a moment. It was more than likely that the man had spoken the truth when angry, and that Buffalo was the place from which he had been brought. Did you hear the name of the man who brought me to Thompson's? I heard Peter call him Bill. Bob started. Could the man have been Bill Barker? The robber? Such would not be very strange. Barker had said he knew something concerning Bob's early history. Of course, he must have told untruth about the boy's father being a thief, but still, Bob was inclined to believe that Barker knew a good deal. Did this Bill ever come back? Oh, yes, he used to come about every 3 months at first, but during the last year he came only once. Then Peter and him had a big row, and that ended it. What was the row about? Something about money. I didn't make it out, but I heard Peter say that if it wasn't that he had become attached to you, he would have sent you back. Back where? I don't know. Haven't you ever learned anything about yourself? Not a word. Bob swallowed a curious lump that had come up in his throat. But I am trying hard to get on the track. I know one thing, and since you have told me so much, I'll tell you it. The Bill Barker, who was one of the robbers we are after, was, to my way of thinking, the man who brought me to Peter Thompson's house. Gracious, how did you learn that? By certain things I heard him say. That is why I am anxious these robbers should be caught. I see. You don't know anything further, do you? No, I left Peter's, you know. And then Mother and my only sister died, and I was all upset. But I thought I knew your face. Let me hear from you, if you ever learn anything. I certainly shall. By the way, do you think you would remember this Bill, if you should ever see him again? I can't say. He always came at night, and was pretty well muffed up. Evidently, he didn't wish to be seen, mused Bob. That shows his work was underhandled. A little later, Bob and Frank left. The young man noticed that the youth was unusually silent on the road, but he asked no questions until the outskirts of Stampton were reached, and then he did not touch the subject nearest to Bob's heart. What do you intend to do in Stampton, now we have arrived? I hardly know, said Bob. I must find some boarding place, I suppose, and then I'll hunt for a job among the photographers. Don't you think we had better report to the police about the spoon first? Of course. They soon met a policeman who directed them to the station house. They found the chief in charge and quickly related what they had learned. Certainly an important clue, said the chief. I will send a man to follow up without delay, and I'll leave the spoon with you to be returned to Mrs. Wright, said Bob. Bob and Franklin then separated, as the young man had to send a telegram to the firm for which he worked. He was having a vacation, but had to keep in communication in case his services were needed. Bob had but slight difficulty in finding a suitable boarding house, where he obtained a neatly furnished attic room and good board for $4.50 a week, washing thrown in. He had the landlady change the $50 bill and paid for a week in advance. That breaks the 50, thought the youth, but I think I'd better learn more about the photographing business before I buy the camera. It was now too late to look for a situation, and Bob started out to hunt up Frank, who said he would stop at the American Hotel. Bob had not been to a large city for some time, and the many sights to be seen pleased him greatly. He often hesitated to gaze into a shop window, and when he reached a photographic outfit establishment, he stopped for a long time. Very fine views, Maverick, he heard one gentleman say to another as both emerged from the doorway. That's true Fallon. I wish we had as good a lot. It would help our excursion tours wonderfully. The two men passed down the street. Bob gazed after them. One of them must be Grace Maverick's father, he said to himself. I wonder where they live. I would like to take a look around, even if I didn't go in. For Bob thought a country boy like himself had no business in one of those fine brownstone mansions, even if he had been invited to call. Bob continued to look at the things displayed in the show window until he had noted them all. He made up his mind that there was more to the art of photography than he had dreamed. But I'll master it. See if I don't, he muttered, and he turned away and resumed his walk. I won't be a nobody any longer. Bob had scarcely gone a dozen steps when he saw a familiar-looking figure approaching. The man was Slippery Paul Bidwell, the sneak thief. Chapter 8. Bob obtains a situation. For the moment, the sneak thief did not recognize Bob. Not so fast, my friend, cried the boy. Bidwell started back. What? You? He exclaimed. Exactly, Bidwell. And I want you. Bidwell turned and darted across the street. Bob lost no time in following. Reaching the other side of the thoroughfare, the sneak thief made off as fast as his long legs would permit. He was a good runner, and would no doubt have gotten away had not a fortunate accident occurred. Turning a corner, Bidwell ran full tilt into a stout man who was walking leisurely along, carrying a basket on his arms. Down went the stout man, with Bidwell on top of him, while the basket with its contents flew in all directions. What? The stout man spluttered. Beg pardon, returned Bidwell glibly. It's a case of life or death. Man seriously injured. He attempted to rise, but before he could do so, Bob had him by the arm. Stay where you are, ordered the youth determinedly. Let go of me, boy, cried Bidwell angrily. Not much. Police! Police! The stout man arose slowly to his feet and stared at Bob. What does this mean, young man? He questioned. This man is a thief and is trying to get away. It's not so, put in Bidwell. A man is dying and I am running for a doctor. He's a thief, I say, went on Bob. Will you call a policeman? I will, returned the stout individual. He was angry at Bidwell for the rough treatment he had received. A policeman was not far away, and the man hurried off to get his assistance. Bidwell tried to wrench himself loose, but Bob's grip was a good one, and he held on like grim death. What's the row here? Demanded the policeman as he hurried up, followed by the stout man. I want this boy arrested, said Bidwell hurriedly. He has just escaped from the asylum. Crazy, eh? As crazy as a bedbug. He's been following me around for over an hour. That's not so, put in Bob. This man is a sneak thief, and he's crazy on the subject of thieves, said Bidwell. He was once scared by a midnight burglar, and it affected his brain. He belongs up at the Clovedale Asylum. Well, what were you running for? Asked the stout man suspiciously. A man was hurt. I was running to get a doctor. Who are you? I am Albert E. Whistler, the hardware manufacturer of Troy. I came to Stampton this morning on business. He tells it good, said Bob. Shall I tell you who he really is? Don't believe him. He is crazy. His right name is Bidwell, and he is known as Slippery Paul the Crook. At this declaration, the policeman opened his eyes. You're sure about that? Positive. If you don't believe me, take us both to the station house. That's fair, said the stout individual. I'll pick up my basket and set it in one of those stores and go along. I'm anxious to see the matter out. This arrangement did not suit Bidwell, but he put on a pleasant face. All right, I'll go along, he said, but keep a sharp lookout on that boy. And I'll ask you to handcuff him, said Bob. He may try to slip away. At that, Bidwell muttered something under his breath. He looked as if he wanted to kill Bob, and the policeman saw that the shot had told. You'll bear watching, I'm thinking, he said. So I'll... Hello! Once more, Bidwell had taken to his heels, but the officer was a fine runner, and he soon overtook the sneak thief. That settles it. Hold out your hands. What for? Never mind, hold them out. Bidwell did so, and he was quickly handcuffed. Then the whole party marched to police headquarters. Bidwell was quickly recognized by the captain of the police, and his capture was considered an important one, especially when Bob related the particulars of the jewel robbery. A pawn ticket was found in the sneak thief's pocket, and this afterwards proved to be for money loaned on the diamond and ruby cross, which was returned to Mrs. Varley. The stout man, who had been knocked down, became quite interested in Bob, and after the hearing was ended, and Bidwell locked up, he followed the youth to the street. Good for you, he said, clapping Bob on the back. I admire your pluck. It is not every young man would have braved it out as you did. I knew I was right, and I had nothing to fear, sir. Did you say your name was Robert Alden? Yes, sir. Do you belong in Stampton? Not exactly. I came from Shellville. I'm here looking for a job. Oh! At any particular trade? I wish, if possible, to learn the art of photography. I know a little about it, and I am anxious to learn more. The stout man smiled. Do you know me? He asked. No, sir. My name is Edgar Starley, and I am a photographer. Edgar Starley? I read the name on a sign. So you would like to learn photography? That is my ambition, sir. Rather a difficult art, my boy. And it will take quite a while to learn, too, I suppose, sir. That's true, although some learn quicker than others. Even so, I would like to take it up. Might give you a trial, mused Mr. Starley. Eh? What did you say? Asked Bob quickly. You might come to my studio in the morning. Employment so quickly just suits me, laughed Bob. Rather a lucky encounter after all, said the photographer, joining in the laugh. And what time shall I come? Asked Bob. Unless you have other matters to arrange, come at 6 o'clock. That's rather early, isn't it? For photographing? Not but what I'll be on hand. Hardly when one has a lot of sunlight printing to do. Oh, I see. Real good printing needs sunlight, and to get that one has to be alert the moment the sun comes up. Of course, I do a good deal of printing by gaslight, too." The conversation then drifted around to the subject of wages, and Bob was hired at $6 a week, to be advanced as soon as he was worth more. On the following morning, the youth presented himself at Mr. Starley's studio. He found the place somewhat shabby in appearance, but the man was an excellent photographer, and his business was brisk. Starley was well pleased at the manner in which Bob took hold, and predicted that if the youth continued to apply himself, he would soon be able to take any kind of a picture. During the noon hour, Bob met Frank, and told him of the situation he had secured, and also of Bidwell's capture. "Good for you! Starley is said to be a first-class man, and you had better stick to him for a while, but I must bid you goodbye for the present." "Why? What's up?" "I must go back to work. One of our men has been taken sick, and I've got to take his trip throughout the western part of the state next month." "Then I won't see you for a while." "No, but I'll write, and I'll expect you to do the same." And so the two parted, firm friends. Several days went by, and Bob stuck diligently to his work, much to Mr. Starley's satisfaction. He saw nothing of Grace Maverick, and in a roundabout way learned that the young lady was away on a brief trip to the seashore. The building in which the photographic studio was situated was a large one, containing over 24 offices. A hall ran through the middle as far as the top floor, and there was also a rear hall on the second and third stories. On the evening of the fourth day, Bob was left to lock up alone. Mr. Starley, having gone away on business, and the other assistant being sick, Bob remained behind a little later than usual, being anxious to finish mounting a set of landscapes which were to be called for the next day. It was dark when Bob finished, and stepped out into the hallway, locking up securely. He started to go below. Presently, he heard the murmur of voices on the floor below. He looked down and saw 3 men coming up the second flight of stairs. The hallway was too dark to distinguish faces, but as the 3 men turned and entered an office near the landing just below Bob, the youth recognized the voices. The men were Casco, Barker, and Grogan. What had brought them to the place at this hour in the evening? "Perhaps they are up to one of their old tricks," said Bob to himself. "I ought to notify the police and have them bagged without delay." He heard the men still talking, and anxious to make out what was being said, he tiptoed his way to the door and listened. "You're sure Lawrence is nowhere about?" he heard Barker say. "Positive," returned Casco. "He got a letter calling him to Middletown, and he left on the 4:15 train. Then we have the whole office to ourselves." "We have!" "Then lock the door and come to business." "Yes, it's high time we did the same," growled Grogan. "'Tis a lot of time we've been after wasting." "Slow but sure, Mike," laughed Casco. "You mustn't forget that the police are on our heels." "I doubt if they know we are in Stampton," put in Barker. "The old Nick take that boy. If it hadn't been for him, they wouldn't know who stole the stuff." "So, Bill, you seem to be down on him more than any of us," came from Casco. "So I am." "What's the reason?" "That's my affair." "Oh, if you're going to be so close-mouthed about it," began Casco coldly. "That boy's father did me an injury once, and I haven't forgotten it," returned Barker. "Who was his father?" "Never mind that. He had me jugged, and that's enough. And now the old man's dead, you're going to take it out of the boy, eh? And so would you if you had been treated as I have been. I am not one of the forgiving or forgetting kind." "Sure, and we both know the same," laughed Grogan. "You're a gentleman, and you're Schweitel Baker, and you're a terror when it come to temper." "But say, Bill, didn't you have something to do with the boy when he was younger?" went on Casco curiously. "Who told you I had?" "Nobody exactly, but I fancied—" "You fancy too much, Jim. The matter hasn't got anything to do with the work on hand." Bob listened with bated breath to all that was said. He was sorry Barker had cut the other short. What might he not have learned had the man chosen to continue the conversation? Bob was in a quandary. Should he summon the police, or should he stay and hear whatever might be said? "If I go out, they may leave during my absence," he said to himself. "I think I'd better stay with them until somebody comes this way." He heard the men seat themselves around a table, and then Barker and Casco lit cigars, while Grogan got out a pipe. "Now, to come to business," said Barker. "That's the talk," said Grogan. "Well, Rosenbaum says he will give $400 for the stuff," began Casco. "That's mighty little. He says all the stuff is not solid silver." Barker's face fell, and so did Grogan's. "I know. It's a disappointment. went on Casco. "I thought the hall would pay much better myself, but still $400 is better than nothing, not to say anything of the cash." "Ye can't make that Jew come up in the price," ventured Grogan, puffing away vigorously. "No, he only wanted to give $350 first." "Well, we might as well let it go," said Barker. "The sooner we get the stuff off of our hands, the better." "That's so," returned Casco. "It will leave us free for that other deal." "Through for you," added Grogan. "'Tis myself that is itching to get a work-up upon that." "Plenty of time," said Barker. "By the way, I wonder if there's anything in this place worth taking along." "Nothing like making a search," returned Casco coolly. He and the others arose, and Bob heard them moving about the office. Presently, he heard the slide of a roller-top desk shoved back, and then a conversation too low for him to hear clearly reached his ears. "If I only knew how long they intended to remain," thought the youth. "If I go for the police now, they may leave at any instant, and then I'll miss them, sure." Suddenly, he heard Barker utter a cry. "Just the thing!" "That's so. It will help us wonderfully." "What is it?" questioned Grogan. "Never mind, Mike. You'll know before you are much older." "Yes, but—" Bob caught no more. There was a quick step on the stairs, and the janitor of the building appeared, broom in hand, to sweep out the place. "Hello! What are you doing at the door?" he asked loudly. Bob motioned him to be silent, and then tiptoed his way to where the man stood, mouth wide open in expectation. "There are 3 well-known robbers in Mr. Lawrence's office," whispered the youth. "Robbers!" cried the man louder than ever. "Just wait till I get after 'em." "Better summon the police," urged Bob. "They are all strong men, and you cannot capture them alone." "We'll see if I can't," cried the janitor, who was a very self-important individual. "Run for the police yourself if you want to." He took a key from his pocket and unlocked the office door. Rushing into the apartment, he gazed around. "What's the matter with you?" he cried, turning to Bob angrily. "Nothing! Catch them!" "There's nobody here." "What?" gasped Bob. He brushed past the man. Sure enough, the room appeared deserted. "They were here a moment ago," went on the youth. "Look in the closets." "This is some trick of yours," grumbled the janitor. Nevertheless, he opened the 2 closets which the office contained. Neither held a single human form. During this time, Bob had entered a private office located in the rear of the main one. Here, there was a window opening upon a narrow alley. The window sash was raised, and looking out, Bob saw that the opening readily connected with a fire escape. "That settles it. They've gotten away," thought the youth. "Well," queried the janitor. "You just missed them," said Bob. "They got out on the fire escape. I'm going to run them down if I can." "You must be mistaken," said the janitor. "There don't seem to be anything disturbed." But Bob did not hear him. He was already on his way downstairs 3 steps at a time. Reaching the sidewalk, he hurried around to the alleyway. It appeared to be deserted. Bob looked around. On the curbstone sat a bootblack eating a banana. "Shine, boss?" "No. Did you see 3 men come out of the alley a moment ago?" "I did." "Which way did they go?" The bootblack pointed his dirty finger down the street. "Straight down?" "Yes." "Thanks." Away went Bob at the top of his speed. At the first corner he paused. Had the 3 robbers gone straight ahead, or turned down the side street? "I'll take my chances that they made a turn. The question is, which way? To the left or the right?" he asked himself. Bob looked up and down the side street. He saw that to the left the street came to an end, but a block off. "They must have gone to the right," he muttered. "I'll try that anyway." Turning to his right, he dashed down the cross street. He had gone less than 500 feet when he saw the figure of a man emerge from behind a billboard and scale a nearby fence. The man was Bill Barker.